Welcome inside to the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed here from the campus of Benedictine College. This week we will sit down with women's cross-country student athlete Helen Ullrich. We'll visit with men's wrestling head coach Greg Barner, and then we'll have a special guest coming on and head coach Eric Peterson of Benedictine Baseball to talk about what they've got left remaining from their fundraising standpoint for their special trip down to the Dominican Republic over the holiday break. But on that note, before we get into this week's episode and the interviews, we'll bring in Collin Echols. And Collin, this week on the Raven Rewind, we'll take a look back at what's going on here, what happened this last week at Benedictine College.
So, busy week, not necessarily on campus. We did get a hot start last Wednesday, women's soccer, making it into the postseason, the Hart Conference Tournament. They start off 1-0 win over Park at home. Awesome way to win, or to end the home season, I guess you would say, even though it's technically the postseason. You were on the call for that, and that was kind of a nail-biter game down to that one goal that came in. It was a toss-up at halftime, and then the Ravens pull away and ultimately secure it.
Well, especially since we didn't know what was, we thought we had scored a goal in the first half.
Yes.
And then come to find out at halftime, talking with some of the crew that was down on the field, talking to some of the people that were down on the field, they had called a foul. Or something like, I still don't know entirely for sure what they had told us, but yeah, a great win for them. And then obviously, we'll get into it here in a little bit, but a great win for them to start off their postseason run.
And then, unfortunately, that season comes to an end on Saturday, having to go to the number one seed in the conference, Central Methodist, a 4-2 final there, and the Ravens up 2-1 coming out of halftime, and then you refresh the live stats during our basketball coverage, and all of a sudden it's 4-2, and the match is officially over. But I think overall, pretty successful season for the Ravens. You'd like to see them go a little further, but, up against this team like CMU, that's tough, and you have to go to their place. It makes it a tough match.
Well, CMU Benedictine to Benedictine. I mean, how many times this year have we seen Benedictine come out and score, 2 or 3 goals in a
short stretch,
10 or 15 minute span of a match? And that's exactly what happened with Central Methodist in the second half. Was they came out, and took care of business. Unfortunately, Benedictine could never come back with that counter punch, and I'm trying to stay optimistic. I still think, there's an outside chance depending on how things play out, but I think probably that ends up being their season finale on Saturday as well. But we'll know for sure later this week when the selection show happens on.
That match on Saturday, part of what we are calling the Benedictine Equinox. So if you're a sports fan, the sports equinox is where all the major sports in America play on the same day. So the NBA, the MLB, the NFL, the NHL. Well, we had a bunch of teams in action on Saturday, one of those being volleyball, also in the Hart Conference Tournament going up against top-ranked Grandview. Final was 3-1 in favor of the Vikings. So the season comes to a close for volleyball. Again, an exciting year, and I think a group that is showing a whole lot of potential moving forward for the next couple seasons.
Well, and I think they'd probably tell you they didn't quite get to their expectations. I think there was a certain point towards the home stretch of the season where it didn't look like they were even going to make the tournament. That's how rough it got for them. So to be able to claw back away in, get it in there, something about Benedictine and Grandview in third sets. That I think this time around it was 31-29 in the third set. The first time around it was 32-30 or something.
This one was 32-30.
So then the last time that Benedictine and Grandview played in the regular season, the third set went into the 30s. So and then they got limited to just 9 kills and not a ton of offense in that fourth set, unfortunately. So their season will come to a conclusion with that. But a good number of things to build on for them this year.
Bounce back a little earlier in the week, men's basketball taking on Southwestern. Final score 73-49. They turn around and a barn burner on Saturday against St. Mary, 71-70. Heartbreaker for the Ravens on Saturday. That was a tough fought game. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles, though, in the world of basketball.
Before we even get to St. Mary, rematch with Southwestern, who was a national tournament qualifier a year ago. Benedictine went down to St. Mary's, down to Southwestern, opened up the season last year. 3 of their top scorers back, so two teams are very familiar with one another. Never could really get into that one down there at Haskell on Thursday night. Jumped to Saturday, back and forth first half. Benedictine, I think we built as much as a 12-point lead in the second half. Then they answered that with another run and got it back, and it went back and forth. Deglin Sullivan hits the go-ahead basket with 4.9 remaining in the game, and then St. Mary's hits a corner three with 0.9 on the clock to erase the deficit and give Benedictine just kind of a gut punch to their season. But they'll bounce back. A lot of improvements from the first game to the second game of that Classic down there at Haskell. So I'm going to be excited to see those guys back on campus this week.
And Deglin Sullivan putting up 24 points in each of those two games. He's off to a white-hot start to the season, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see him be able to step into the role. And last year he was more of a distributor and a scorer second. I think now he's become a scoring threat. And his dribble penetration has kind of allowed, it's going to show things a lot this year for the team as well. And, if you cut off the paint or don't cut off the paint, he's going to score. If you cut him off, he's going to kick to any number of guys that are going to be able to shoot from the outside. So it's going to be exciting to see Coach Moody and his team get that thing going this year.
And that was all at the Ernie Stevens Jr. Classic. We'll come back home to Atchison women's basketball, the 2025 Holiday Inn Classic. Briarcliff, the number 20 team in the country, on Friday night, 80-70 the final. And that was a game, too, that really, until the fourth quarter, back and forth kind of, jab for jab is what Dakota and I described it as. There weren't really a whole lot of uppercuts until that fourth.
Well, you and Dakota were on the call of that one as I was overdoing the stats. But I think, if you look back at that one, we're still trying to figure out who we are. We're not completely, full bore with the team that we've got, as we're kind of a couple injuries to some key players that are trying to work through. And to be able to take a national tournament qualifying team, push them to the ropes with a very young team, young from an experience standpoint, young from the number of years they've been on the program standpoint, but also young from just experience. It felt good to see them be in contention in that one, and then what you saw in the fourth quarter was just the experience of Briarcliff just kind of stepping up and taking a game over in the fourth quarter because they've been in that situation.
Riley Bruggeman, the leading scorer there, 23 points, 6 boards, 5 assists. We turn around Saturday, and the Ravens bounce back with a hard-fought win, 74-68 over Southwestern Christian. That was another one that just a team victory, staying a couple scores, couple possessions in head for the whole game, and then really opening it up in the final minute or two of that fourth quarter to secure the win. But again, I mean, just a huge overall over-encompassing performance from BC going up against Southwestern, especially after a tough loss the night before.
And, especially since just the week before, they had the back-to-back games, and you never know how a team's going to come back and play. And Benedictine was in overtime, in their first Classic, and then came back and suffered a tough one on a Saturday afternoon. I think just looking from what I know about those first two games of the Classic that they played down at Tabor versus the two games that they played in our Classic, they're learning. They're moving and they're progressing forward. So it was good to see them bounce back. You never know in Classics what you're going to get in day two. Southwestern Christian, and they were in a back and forth game the night before against Missouri Valley. That kind of was a rock fight, if I'm being honest, to start things out.
Yes, it was.
It was not a lot of offense moving through that game. So you didn't know really kind of what Southwestern was going to bring into that game against Benedictine, and we kind of started to see some players emerge, some things starting to happen for them. So again, another team that's going to be excited to see as they progress through the season.
Bruggeman leading scorer again, 21 points, 6 boards, 8 assists this time. 3 other Ravens in double figures. Hattie Gross with 14, Addie Kane with 10, Owen Dieters with 11. We'll go to the Gridiron, a big weekend for the number 3 ranked Ravens, 31-10, the final score over Baker. Huge win for BC.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that that's it, but unfortunately it's not.
One more big one.
We got another big one coming up this week, but yeah, it was Baker came out after a couple of back and forths. Baker scores the first points of the game, scores a touchdown to go up, and then all Benedictine did was score 24 unanswered. Field goal from Klob in the first score, and then a touchdown late in the first half to take the lead at halftime. And then really in the second half, it was all Benedictine. And I think what's exciting for the football team right now is I think early on this year, you had to respect the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you weren't as worried about the running game. But Xavier Ugorji has given Benedictine a legitimate rushing threat. Witherspoon being healthy now, back in the fold, gives Benedictine a two-headed monster at tailback now that really is kind of a necessary thing in college football now to have more than one. And so having him back, Ugorji closing in on a 1,000-yard rushing season this year, something like 7.1 yards per carry this season, not just 7.8 on Saturday. And what was important for me on Saturday was he had the rushing yards, but then he was able to get the reward and got 2 touchdowns in the second half of that game to help seal the win for Benedictine. So all in all, a great outing for the football team on Saturday, and of course sets it up another big game to end the season, the regular season this week.
Xavier Ugorji, 196 yards on 25 carries, 2 scores. Dalton Witherspoon, 1 touchdown, 96 yards on 14 carries. Jackson Dooley in the passing game, 8 for 17, 119 yards, and a touchdown to Tanner Zimmerman. Cross-country course is where we'll kind of wrap things up on the Raven Rewind, a conference championship for the women's cross-country team. Another one.
And we'll tease it. We'll go ahead and tease it. And the first segment coming up after this will be with Helen Ullrich, and one of the runners on the women's team. Didn't win a conference title last year, but the 7th overall championship for that program and the 5th since 2000. We've got ourselves a dynasty in women's cross country in this conference, and I was so happy to see them get back to the top after. Last year the expectation was it's our title, like going in, and they just ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw a year ago in Mount Mercy running on their home course, and that served to motivate them this year. And they got back to it, and they were impressive on Saturday. And the men, I think the men would tell you they were disappointed. 3rd place, not where they expected to be when the races got done, but they ran into 2 hot programs in Park and Mount Mercy that, if you look at the individual standings, Park went 1, 2, 3, Mount Mercy went 4, 5, 6. And anytime you place the 3 runners in that tight of a bunch that way, it's going to be hard to beat them. And I think the positive for the men that they can take over is, Coach Keneally emailed us or texted us after it happened. 3rd place, a little disappointing, but the fastest they've ever run as a team at the conference championship. So if you put your best effort out there, and it ends up being a 3rd place finish because the best effort was bested by 2 other really good efforts, I think you can still feel like you had a successful end of your season.
I think it was an overall solid week for Raven Athletics last week. Like you said, a big football game coming up this weekend against MNU Senior Day. You'll talk about that at the end of the show with kind of the upcoming schedule. But we're finally in that transition period between fall and winter, and things I think are looking really exciting for the next foreseeable future.
So coming up after the break, we'll visit with Helen Ullrich for women's cross country. You're watching the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed here from the campus of Benedictine College.
Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas is a Newman Guide school with top 10 rankings in U.S. News and the Wall Street Journal. Choose strong Catholic identity and strong academics, including pre-med, nursing, engineering, and classical architecture. Benedictine granted more scholarships this year than ever before. Choose dominant Raven athletics with nearly 20 conference and national championships in the last 5 years. Choose a college consecrated to the Blessed Mother. Engage with a community of faith and scholarship. Join our mission to transform culture in America. It starts with you.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound, happy to be joined today by Helen Ullrich of women's cross country, fresh off a conference championship. And Helen, has that soaked in yet that you guys are conference champions once again?
Almost like the rain that hit us on Saturday. Yeah.
So take us back through Saturday. Obviously, before we even get to Saturday, you're a junior, one of the upperclassmen on a team that's kind of ebbs and flows as far as if it's a young team or an experienced team. But I got a couple of seniors with you this year, a couple of freshmen that all finished in all conference this year. And for those that don't know, top 15 either get all first team all conference or honorable mention all conference. You took 15th, so you got an all honorable mention honor there. But let's go back a year. You come in as a freshman and you're greeted with a conference championship. So that had to be pretty cool. Felt pretty special to be a part of something like that. Then the expectation last year was another conference title. Things didn't work out, and then you don't get that. Did that kind of serve as any more motivation for you guys, for you upperclassmen coming back into this year, just saying, like, we don't want to feel the feeling we had a year ago?
Definitely, 100%. We had it in the cards last year. We could have. Just didn't play it on the day. Mount Mercy had a great day. And then coming in close, we got the second for indoor track. But we're very distance heavy. And so we pull our weight for outdoor track. And knowing that we've gotten the conference champ so many times, and we're in it's either we win or we get second. So we knew we were going to do it. We had many of us returning. We only had a couple of seniors who didn't return out of that top 7. And our freshmen came in hot, really crazy. So we knew we could do it from the very beginning. And I think we were ranked bottom of the 25 or maybe just out of it when we started this season. And every week we've moved up. I think before conference we were ranked 17th, and I don't doubt that we're ranked above 15th right now. But yeah, definitely we were super motivated. We knew we could do it, and it's always between us and Mount Mercy, and it just stings a little bit. And we still qualified for nationals last year. So this is our 6th year in a row qualifying for nationals, but we broke that streak. So yeah, definitely the motivation came in, and we came in hot with goals, and we set the lofty goal of 12th in the nation when last year we finished, I think, 24th at nationals. But every week we were reminded of that goal. So yeah.
So we get to Saturday, and obviously, you guys can control how you prepare mentally, how you prepare physically, but you can't control Mother Nature. And she decided she didn't want to have optimal conditions on Saturday. How does that? Is that just is it a mental block where you guys just got to come together as a team and say, everybody out here is racing in these same conditions. We just have to go do what we can do?
Yeah, I think so. We've gotten a taste of a lot of the different conditions. We've had some really hot days. We've had some really cold days. But at the end of the day, it did not waver our confidence. Like, we knew that we could do it. And our coach kept reminding us, like, okay, this is perfect running weather. Although my southern bones can't really handle the low 40s, high 30s. And the rain was just a little addition on top. It wasn't too bad until the men started racing. But, yeah, it didn't waver our confidence at all.
So as you guys are working through the race, like, take us through, like, the strategy. I mean, obviously it's an individual sport, but it's very team-centric, and we talked to Joshua clear back at the beginning of the semester, and it was, you can be a really good individual, but if you're so far ahead of the rest of your team that the team results don't come with it. And you guys really this year, for the most part, always seem to be, you run in packs, you run in groups. Everybody's kind of paced right there with each other. Is that how much of that's intentional versus just that's how much it kind of works out? And then the competitive juices amongst you guys, like how does that work as far as the team dynamic to be like? Because it's not always been one or two. There's been 3 or 4 or 5 of the positions have flipped throughout the year, and is it just kind of like somebody sets the pace and then everybody tries to go get her, or kind of how does that work?
Yeah, so this year's very interesting. We've had 8 girls all season running the same paces in the top group. So really any week, like I've been first, I've been third, fifth, like sixth, I've been all over. And that happens with all of us. But that's a very good thing. And most meets, we don't actually end up running together, but we do finish together.
Right.
Or like at least in pairs, whatever. And our coach keeps saying like, hey, you're running all the same paces. You're finishing together. How about let's race together? And we have certain people who prefer to go out a lot stronger than others. Some are sit and kick. But the goal going into conference for sure was let's intimidate them. We know we can win. We don't want to just win. We want to crush them on Mount Mercy's home course. We want to scare them pretty much. That was the goal. So the goal was to pack run as much as we can, get a big pack right in the front to scare people. So that's what we did. The first mile was a little bit a little bit shaky. We had people in and out. One girl took it out really fast, and I'm glad she didn't die out, but she snuck back in with that group. And so we had that top 5 right there, and that was really solid. And then we had a solid pack of 3 right behind. And so that was good. The goal was to pack up and scare everybody else. And this was the first meet. I think we really did that from the start all the way through, working together.
So obviously now, automatic bid into nationals. You go from, Iowa, where not ideal conditions, to Tallahassee, Florida, in a couple of weeks, right before Thanksgiving to compete. This is different. The first time down in Tallahassee, right? This is a different course than where you guys went last year, or is this the same course? I can't remember off the top of my head.
This is different. Yeah, we haven't been to Tallahassee since it was a 5K 3 years ago. Yeah.
So just take us so this will be a brand new course for a lot of you guys. What you'll get down there obviously in time to kind of take a look at it, maybe get some practice runs through it. So what are the next couple of days, couple of weeks look like for you and the team as you get ready to continue to prepare to not just, conference championships is great, but being able to go compete for a national championship, that has to be some icing on the cake this year.
Yeah, for sure. We need to remember, like Coach Kofer keeps reminding us, that nationals is the big meet, not conference. Yes, we wanted to sweep, but that is done, and we were going to do that anyways. But that's not what we train for. We train for nationals. And also these rankings that come out, we get excited every week. We're moving up. But it doesn't matter where we're ranked. It just matters how we do on the particular day. So we tapered coming down. We wanted to feel really fresh for conference. And now we can't bring the mileage up a ton in the next 2 weeks. But just hit those workouts really hard, really specific. Work on a lot of speed. We haven't really hit a lot of speed, just a lot of long, moderately fast work to build up that endurance, and now we have solid endurance. We've been training since June, so we have that under our belt. Now we're just the speed. This course in Tallahassee is very nice. It's very fast, except at the end there's a big hill, and we don't do any hill sprints or anything like that. But that's because we train hills every single day. Because in Atchison, that's just what we have to do.
There's no flat ground in Atchison.
So that gives us an edge up in every meet. Our coach reminds us on what edges we do have. Like on the few courses that have had big hills, like, okay, you run that every day. On the courses that are, or the particular days that have been super hot, it's like, okay, well, half of us are from the south, and the rest of us, we've been training in a lot of hot days. It'll be good.
Well, Helen, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it. I know it kind of threw you off your Monday routine, so we'll let you get back to things. But coming up after the break, we'll be visiting with Greg Barner, the head coach of the men's wrestling team, here on this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed.
Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas is a Newman Guide school with top 10 rankings in U.S. News and the Wall Street Journal.
I'm well aware I'm on Benedictine ground today, a place filled with the mind and spirit of St. Benedict.
Choose strong Catholic identity and strong academics. In 2024, students were granted more scholarships than ever before.
Being here now is one of the best things that has happened to me. I didn't know that authentic Catholic education was something that I could experience.
Choose a vibrant residential college in the heart of the Midwest, consecrated to the Blessed Mother, with daily Mass, confession, and perpetual adoration.
Here at Benedictine, all my friends around me, all the people around me were channeling me in to truly make the faith my own.
Choose dominant Raven athletics with nearly 20 conference and national championships in the last 5 years.
It's taught me responsibility, accountability, on the field, off the field, in the classroom. Being a strong Catholic man, I feel like is my mission for how I can transform culture in America.
Make St. Benedict proud of you to be a son and daughter of this outstanding college.
Entrust your future to a college that believes that faith and reason are not just about yesterday, but about today and tomorrow. Because Jesus Christ is the same, yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Engage with a community of faith and scholarship. Join our mission to transform culture in America. It starts with you.
Welcome back to the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound now joined by men's wrestling head coach Greg Barner. And Coach, the season off to a pretty hot start. You kind of showcase, really the only thing we get first semester is what happened this last weekend, and two different kind of formats. And I talked with Chris Sean a little bit about that on Friday morning after he got done with his day. But like Friday, duals format tournament, Saturday an open invite tournament. Just kind of, we don't want to recap the whole thing, but just your general thoughts on how Friday and Saturday went for your program.
Yeah, I think Friday it was awesome. There's some craziness going on obviously beforehand, but people working behind the scenes, Coach St. Clair, Coach Comp, guys that were injured helping out was awesome. So got that figured out, but that way the guys could just go out there and compete at a high level. I thought they did that. I had two duels that really dominated extremely well and then we had one duel. It's nice to have that where we kind of got down there, got a little hole, but guys instantly bounced back and responded really, really well. So it's kind of nice not just going out there and just straight dominating everybody, but also seeing kind of what you're made of when you get punched in the mouth there. I think the guys did a really good job responding. So Friday was awesome. Saturday, another great tournament, 6 placers. Christian Griggs, he won his. Tech followed everybody or pinned everybody. So that was awesome to see, just very dominant fashion for him. And he's off to a great start. Rance, a freshman, made the finals with him, which he's really come on hot here. I wasn't quite sure what we expect from him. He's just a 2-time state qualifier at Oklahoma, not to disrespect that, but
right.
You got kids that come in as state champions, multi-state place winners. They struggle a little bit, but he's just really bought into what we're doing here, and it's paying dividends for him. So awesome to see that, and a handful of other guys. Jackson Perkins making the finals again, not the outcome we wanted, but he had a great tournament. So really happy with the effort and the attitude of the guys, though, on a 2-day tournament like that early in the season where it's weigh-in one day, weigh-in the second day, 7-8 matches in a couple of days. That's a lot on the body early in the season. So I thought it was an awesome test for our guys, and they did a great job responding.
Well, you talked about a couple of the guys, obviously names that some people are recognizing as guys that came back from last year, but another newcomer you talked about in Rance. Who are some guys that you're looking at in addition to those 3 or 4 guys that will be people that fans and those that are coming to watch you guys wrestle at home can anticipate seeing this year?
Obviously Griggs, he returned national qualifier as a freshman, first automatic qualifier in 6 years for us last year. He's a big one. Jackson Perkins, they're both ranked right now. He's been in the finals. He's 9-1 on the year. Rance Ridley, new kid, freshman. I think he's like 8-2 on the year so far, 8-3. So he's done an awesome job. Placed at both last tournaments. Doug Blaha, I think he's like 9-2, 10-2. He was close to making nationals last year as a freshman. Mason Harris, same thing. He's got a lot of wins already. He was a conference wrestler of the week last year as a freshman, over 20 wins. Danny Skoll, he's a D3 national qualifier that transferred in for us at heavyweight. So he didn't wrestle this past weekend. Just kind of, he's a little bit older. We got a, what do you call it in basketball, kind of game manager, whatever it is. So that's kind of what we're doing right now for him, letting the knees rest up and everything. But he was pretty dominant in his first tournament. Those are kind of the big guys. Caleb Peralta, he's only got 1 loss in the year to a Grandview kid, and we obviously know how tough they are. But I think he's 8-1 on the year. He didn't wrestle last year because he had a small injury, but he's just hit the ground running. He's an awesome young man. He's like a little bull terrier. He just goes out there and fights. So all great kids. Got to give a shout out to like Mason Schultz though too. Awesome young man. He didn't have the weekend he wanted to, but he's a great leader. He's been here all 4 years with us since we started, and if we didn't have him, I don't know where this program would be. It's not as good as it would be without him though. So just really happy that he's still with us.
Well, and we'll take back to the start of the year. You were able to go to a tournament where it has kind of an open grouping and then a freshman-sophomore grouping. How important is that as you do start to continue to develop? You just talked about it. You got a freshman and a sophomore that was a national qualifier as a freshman, but they're the same weight.
Yep.
So how important is that to balance? You want to see what you've got, but at the same time, what you've got and certain other guys. So how do you balance that as the season progresses?
Is going to those tournaments, it's nice that you have those opens where it might be like a freshman sophomore with like an upperclassman or a more advanced division. That way some of those freshmen, they don't get thrown to the wolves right away. They can wrestle guys that maybe are a little more their skill set right now, build some confidence, get some good mat time. But it's just, continuously going to these opens and kind of seeing where guys are at. Like this last one that we had, it was just everybody. It wasn't in a different division, so that really helped out. So that was nice because I wasn't sure what we had there with Rance. I know we had something good, but I wasn't quite sure where it was at because he was in the amateur the previous weekend and Griggs was in the open. And, he did well, but now he's going into the open and he's beating not freshmen, but juniors and seniors as well, too. So just kind of keeping tabs on the guys and making sure we're still growing and developing as, wrestlers and people, too.
From a scheduling standpoint, obviously, it takes a lot out of the guys when they, wrestle as many times as they did through the course of a Friday and Saturday. You're off now for a little while, but when you look at balancing, conference duels versus going to tournaments on a weekend, what goes into that? How do you plan your schedule? I mean, obviously injuries kind of dictated a lot of things the last couple of years for you guys. Yep. and just not having some of the success that the expectations were. And obviously you've got to try to balance, like, giving guys enough time to show what they've got, but then don't push them too far and then run the risk of, some kind of injury relating to that.
Yep. No, it's definitely a science. We try to make sure it's kind of balanced. Got some breaks in there in between. It's usually we want to hit a lot of tournaments at the beginning, kind of like we're doing right now. Obviously, had some duels and stuff, but that way everyone can go out there and compete. A little bit different than maybe football or basketball, where it's like, you got a set number of guys that are going out there and competing for varsity spots. We go to an open tournament, we can take 5 guys of that weight class, they can all compete there and kind of see what we have, see who kind of comes out on top. So doing a lot of that, and then obviously once we get, that second part of the season, after January, after Christmas, we got a lot more duels, a lot more conference stuff going on. That way we kind of have an idea like, okay, this is our guy at 25, this is probably our guy at 84, and we can kind of insert them that way, opposed to playing a guessing game early on in the season. If we have a duel, it's like, well, I'm not quite sure who might be the best guy at this weight class right now. Now we have like some hard facts, some hard objectives, like this guy's placed 3 times, this guy hasn't yet, this is probably our guy that's going to be best.
You talk about the depth that you do have at certain weight classes. At what point do you kind of maybe start to shuffle the lineup a little bit where you might have a guy go up or go down a weight in order to give him an opportunity? And then how does that, I know there's certain rules that, you can either, what is it, 2 or you can go up 2,
you
down 2?
You can go up as heavy, like if you weigh 133, you can weigh, we had that this weekend actually, you saw that kid from Colby. If you weigh 33, you can wrestle way up to 197, so you can wrestle up as high as you want, which is crazy that kid did do. I've never seen that before. We did it a little bit this weekend. We had Isaac Kaufman, for example, he's a 74-pounder. We bumped him up a couple matches for 84 because we didn't have, one of our 84s was out the last couple weeks, and a couple of the 84s, one was a freshman that wrestled the previous weekend, and the other guy hadn't wrestled yet, so we weren't quite sure what we had there. Isaac, we've seen him wrestle plenty, right. So we knew what we had there. Let's throw him in there and see what he can do. And plus, he's at a really strong depth class with, now you got Rance in the mix, you got Griggs in the mix. So I just want to see what he could do, and he did a great job for us at 84.
So do you have to have a certain declared weight at some point in the season, or is that not a thing anymore?
No, that's not a thing. High school, I believe you do have to have a declared weight. I know it was the case when I was in high school. College, it doesn't matter. If you're wrestling 57 the whole year, and then we get to conference, and you want to go down or go up to 74, you can definitely do that. Or if you want to go down to 49, as long as your descent allows that, you can do that as well too. So it's pretty much wherever you feel comfortable there at the end of the year.
Well, we'll shift gears now. We've talked about the team, talked about the expectations for this season. You mentioned, you've been here for 4 years now. You had a full set of class in front of you. What point in your career and your life trajectory did you determine that, hey, I think coaching wrestling is something that I want to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember, when I got into wrestling, I didn't want to wrestle, honestly. I played basketball from kindergarten to 8th grade and played football and all other sports. Football was my main sport, but I was about 5'9" as an 8th grader, so a pretty big growth spurt there, and I was running everybody over as a fullback, and that's what I wanted to do. And playing basketball, I was playing post, so 5'9" post, you don't see that in college. And the football coach was the wrestling coach, and I played fullback, and he came up to me. I remember it was 6th period study table, 8th grade, and he pinched me on the back of my neck because he kept bugging me about going up for wrestling. And he said, if you don't go up for wrestling, I'm going to give you football. So he blackmailed me into wrestling. But it was I'm really glad he did that because it's worked out extremely well for me. So, that's kind of how I got into wrestling. And then I remember as a junior, in high school, we would have junior high practice, 8th period. And I had 8th period free for side table, which I wasn't using wisely. So I went into the junior high wrestling practice room. I was just kind of messing around with the kids, and I was helping out a little bit. And there were some kids, like I was showing them some technique and some moves, and you kind of saw from day 1 to maybe day 3 or day 4 just the growth and improvement they had. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, actually. And then I would there was one moment where the head coach, he kind of stepped out for a little bit, and he let me kind of run practice, and we just did like a mosh pit basically, and we were just sending guys in to wrestle live, and I was screaming instructions, this and that and the other, and I was like, wow, that's really cool, you know. And I was kind of looked up to coaches. I was like, I think this is something I want to get into. And then I got my first high school job out of college, and I mean, I was ecstatic. I was so pumped up. I remember where I was at. I remember texting my aunt, my uncle, and my dad, and my mom, like, hey, I'm going to be a high school coach. I thought it was so cool. And it's like, they're even going to pay me. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this is awesome. And it was a great experience. Even just high school, I was only getting paid like a couple $1,000 or whatever it was. But the relationships I had with those guys, it was just so much fun. And, I mean, I can remember the day after the state tournament, you know, going home, and I'm like bawling and crying because I'm not going to be seeing these kids anymore, right. You know. So I just really love those relationships, and that's when I knew, like, hey, this is what I want to do. You know, that was 1 year out of college. I was doing personal training and group fitness classes, and then I got my GA position at Radcliffe University, and that's what really kind of got the ball rolling there for me.
Well, in wrestling, you know, it's a tight community. It's a, you know, the names that might be that people may know, everybody knows them.
Yeah.
So who are some folks maybe over the years as you've continued to grow as a coach that have been either, you know, coaches or other wrestlers that you've kind of leaned on to kind of pull kind of some of what they bring to the table as inspiration for what you're going to take to your team?
Yeah, I mean, big one for me is John Smith. You know, he's considered one of the greatest American wrestlers of all time. So he coached at Oklahoma State for a long, long time. He just retired recently, but a lot of his technique, his styles, you know, Iowa style too. Tom Brands, Terry Brands, Dan Gable. You know, that's land of the Hawkeyes. So we definitely take a lot from them. Tough, smart, physical wrestling. But we take a lot from other coaches too. You know, we talk about John Wooden all the time. I mean, at the beginning of the year, we always talk about John Wooden, his first practice. He would show the kids, you know, this is how you tie your shoes. This is how you put your socks on. This is how you clip your fingernails so you don't roll your ankles. You don't get blisters. You don't get ingrown toenails. John Calipari, another big cool one that we really go back to. Nick Saban's huge. We're always quoting Nick Saban and going off his philosophy. Phil Jackson, I was a big Chicago Bulls guy, so read all his books and really dived into what he did as a coach too, because he's more, you know, if you don't know much about him, right. He's more of a Zen type teacher, you know. So I mean, we take it from everybody. It's just like when I was doing strength conditioning, we're not just doing bodybuilding or strongman or powerlifting. You try to take from all areas, because I can take some from Nick Saban, I can take some from Phil Jackson, I can take something from Dan Gable and kind of blend it into our program and see what fits for us.
Well, and you touched on a whole, you know, I mean, I'm sure Gable's a technical side of things. You've got Phil Jackson's, that's more the mental approach to things, and then, you know, Saban's just the motivator. The motivator.
The process, man.
So it's interesting to hear that, you know, and then you come to Benedictine, you know. What was it about Benedictine that intrigued you to want to take on this position? It's a, you know, still from a, you know, NAI standpoint, a very young program.
Yeah. Yep. You know, I'm from Iowa, Southwest Iowa. My wife, she's from Minneapolis, so we don't give her too much of a hard time about that. We went to the Iowa-Minnesota game 2 weeks ago, and that was a fun game, 41-3. So it was a fun ride home for us. But we wanted to get. We were out in Michigan at the time. We just wanted to get closer to home. That was the biggest thing for us. And this is like 2.5 hours away. You know, my mom was here this past weekend. We got a little girl. We got a second one on the way. So that was really huge. You know, family being close. I think the second one was just, you know, the school itself. It's got similar values than what my family has. You can see the growth in the school. You can see the direction forward, always forward, everywhere forward. And that's evident. You know, you look around here, there's always something new popping up, a new program popping up. You know, there's also a lot of success with these programs. Like I tell the kids, the amount of All-Americans that we've had just in the last 10 years, the amount of conference titles that we've had in the last 10 years is just ridiculous. So it's a lot of athletic success. Obviously, wrestling, we probably wouldn't put in that realm yet when I got here, because I think we had about 16 guys on the team. Facilities weren't the greatest, but we've done a great job bringing the right guys to fit our lineup to stay on the bus with us. And we've done a lot of updates to facilities, you know, wrestling room, locker room, everything. And we just saw all the potential that could be there for it, you know, with the programs that we have, with the value, the character of the school, and just the location too. It's a great location, close to Kansas City, close to Omaha, not that far from Iowa and Des Moines. We just saw so much great potential, and it's really starting to go that way for us. We just had our first winning season last year in about 7 years, and we're off to a great start this year too. So really excited for the future of these guys.
How has recruiting gone? I mean, I know that a lot of coaches are able to bring some success from Catholic high schools to come to Benedictine. So that the faith life is a lot that means to a lot of the kids that come. But a lot of those same kind of schools don't necessarily have wrestling programs, or if they do, they're maybe not caliber enough to bring. So how has that gone? How does that balance of trying to find mission fit kids, but also kids that are going to add value to as a successful student athlete?
No, I mean it's a challenge, but I mean that's part of our program. We want to create a challenging environment. It's mainly just going out there and find the kids, like you kind of said, like your mission type kids. Mission that fit the school, but also too, like I said, guys that fit our culture, that are the right guys for the bus that we can put on the seat with us. And it's just really talking to them and asking them questions. Like Grant Ridley is a great example of that. We talked to him. He didn't commit until as a freshman. He didn't commit until I think like May last year. But we were talking to him from almost August until May. And we're just calling him up every about 2 weeks and just having a conversation with him. Like, hey, this is a great kid. He's on top of things. He communicates well. He gets little things done right. He has a great attitude. I know he has a great effort. He came on a visit and he just wanted to scrap. He wrestled with Christian. He pointed him out. I was like, I want to wrestle with you. So that was a kid that we wanted for sure. So I think it's just really going out there and turning over all the stones, contacting ADs, coaches, club coaches, going through the social media, the recruiting sites, and just finding kids that fit, what your culture is, a challenging, competitive, supportive environment. So I think we've done a really good job with that with our sophomore class and our freshman class we have this year, and some older guys as well too, some of our transfers.
Well, thank you, Coach, for coming in and talking with us here on this edition of Greatness Unleashed. We appreciate, what you've been doing for the program. Good luck for the rest of the season. Coming up after the break, we'll sit down with a special guest, head coach Eric Peterson of Benedictine Baseball. You're watching the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed here from the campus of Benedictine College.
It all began in 1937. A vision to start something different, something better. A college athletics association where competition wasn't just about the scoreboard, but about character, growth, and rising together. From that first tip-off, the NAIA has grown in size and in spirit, in the way we play, the way we lead, the way we make athletics greater than a game.
This is college athletics the way it was meant to be. This is the right way to play.
Welcome back to the final segment on this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound back with you again. We're now joined by special guest, head coach of Benedictine Baseball, Coach Eric Peterson. And I know you're sitting at home right now thinking it's not baseball season. We're almost at the end of the thick of football season. But special guest this week because you guys have got a special thing on the horizon for you in the program. And it's kind of in the dog days, I guess you could say, of that and getting it all kind of squared away. But got a Dominican Republic trip coming back up for you guys coming up here over the holiday break. Just talk about, where you guys are at in that process. We've been doing some different things throughout the course of this semester to kind of meet a matching goal, and then you've done some different drives and stuff throughout the semester as well for some of the items that you guys are going to need to take down there with you. So just kind of give us a quick update of kind of where that process is and what you guys are maybe still looking for.
Sure. We're basically in a 2-year process because as soon as we got back from the Dominican, all of those guys wanted to go back, right? And so we're like, okay, then let's start planning, right? Because if you try to do it quickly, then you don't get everything that you want, right? And so this has been a 2-year process. We're at the finish line, which is fun to be there because we're less than a month away from being down around those kids, and for the second time going, that's why we're going, is these kids that we get to have a huge impact on, but they have an impact on us. So you mentioned the gift and the matching gift. Have some just incredible donors that pledged that to basically cut the cost in half for our kids. And I'm proud to say we've made it.
Good.
We've made it. We're there. We're to the finish line. Just the little things at this point. They're actually big things, but we're pushing to get the Christmas gifts, and we're going to buy down there. We're working with a distributor. You could say it's like a mini version of a Walmart that's down there, right? The costs are a lot less, and then we don't have to ship them, or we don't have to put them on the airplane and pay for that. So that's where we're at. We're getting Christmas like everybody else is, right? Figuring out how to pay for those things. Cool note, side note: the orphanage that we go to, Casa Amor, found out that we're coming back, right? And they sent a Christmas wish list items, which is awesome.
Right.
You know, like you think about our kids and the things that they want, and you know, usually it's one big gift or whatever, and these kids want the bows and the bracelets and the beads and all of those things. So it's fun to get those, because we're going to go back and see the same kids that we saw 2 years ago.
So, you know, let's go back to that first trip. You know, I mean, it's a combination of playing a little bit of baseball, doing some community service, and then, you know, Mother Nature kind of threw a little bit of a wrench, and there wasn't a lot of baseball that got played, but there was a lot more opportunity for service and things like that.
Sure.
So just kind of take us back to that trip, and obviously it made an impact on the guys enough that they wanted to go do it again.
Yeah, and it did. And I'll go a step further. The first time I went, when I was with KU, it was a lot of baseball and a little bit of service. And when I left that, I was like, if I ever get an opportunity to be at a school or a place that values the service part, right, and values the mission part, we're going to go more mission and sprinkle a little baseball in. And that's the opportunity that we got last 2 years ago. We got some rain, and we played around in some mud and figured it out with the kids. But really, it's the mission part. It's what we do and who we're serving, right, that is the basis of why we're going. And we'll play a little baseball. You could call it that. Like, the bases move, and it's nowhere near what you would assume a game would be. And there's no keeping score. Like, they don't care. They just want to play, right? And so we're going to do that the first 2 days this year. In case we do get some rain, we can get back on there. But you bring up a good point, right? And we'll talk about it, I'm sure. But there's things that you don't expect when you go on trips like this. And one of the things that we didn't know and really didn't think about was if it rains, right? And for us, if it rains, we just throw our hoodie up and we're good to go. For the kids especially, healthcare isn't great, right? So if they get sick, they're in trouble. Right, and one of the things that we're looking for right now, we're talking about gifts, we're talking about items, is the ponchos, right? And we want to go, and we're through the sugarcane villages, and it just floods, and it's there's not great drainage, there's not infrastructure, there's just nothing there. So when they lose a day, they lose massive pay, right? And they lose their livelihood. And so we're looking for ponchos. Is there anybody's got a connection for ponchos? I know that's a weird ask, but it'll allow them to work. It'll allow them to enjoy going outside still, without, at least an increased chance of being sick from the rain.
So if somebody does want to contribute, or what are some things that you're still looking? Is it at this point, because of how close it is it more of a monetary ask so that you guys have the ability to go and then purchase things, or are you still looking for certain items that people can donate at this point?
Well, there's certain items that we can buy down there. And from just a monetary and just a convenience, it's easier to do that down there. But they don't have ponchos, right? Like, it doesn't rain there. So when it does, like, that's not something they're rushing out to buy. So, again, we could take those down. That's not a problem. The last trip, we took 30, 50-pound bags of equipment and left it all down there. We're trying to cut that in half. So we can spend maybe that money somewhere else, right? Christmas presents, that kind of thing. Fuel, they need fuel, they need propane. Right now they're burning their fire with plastic, and you shouldn't eat off that, right? Like that's not safe, it's not healthy. And so we're trying to give them an alternative resource to be able to burn and be able to have fires and that kind of thing. So monetary's great, it's always good, and we'll tell you where it's going and what it's exactly for, so you're comfortable. It's not just going off into wherever. Monetary donations are fantastic at this point.
So how does someone find the location then to make that donation?
Sure. There's multiple links on our social media websites and platforms. And then you can always just reach out to me, my email, and really I can direct you where to go at that point. We do have 2 accounts. One's for the Christmas presents and all of that. And then one's the main account that, again, we're at the finish line of that. Like, guys need to do a little bit of fundraising, but we're there. So, there's multiple ways to reach out, and we can kind of direct you. Paul Dorr and Ricky Kamichek have done an unbelievable job of really coordinating on the back end of things. So we can reach out to those guys too, but any one of us and our social links are good too.
All right, so we talked about that. That's obviously what I wanted to bring you on for the most, but just recently finished up fall ball with the Willys World Series. Kind of changed the format a little bit this year.
We did.
Kind of not necessarily banana ball played, but like a banana ball format where it put more of an emphasis on winning an inning versus the game. How did the guys react to kind of that? How did that change the intensity of it?
I can describe it as bananas, right? It was questioned at first. Like, they wanted just a normal series format. And, I pulled the HC card. And I said, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do because I think it's what we need to focus on, right? We're an experienced group. Finally, we're there, right? We don't need to look on the big picture. We just need to say real small, right? So inning by inning, half inning by half inning, focus on the little things that allow you to win a baseball game, right? And then over the course of time, you get to the 7th inning, you got a chance to do that, right? So we just put a hyper focus on winning that inning, winning that pitch. You do that 21 times with 18 to 22-year-olds. It gets a little bananas, right? And so there was some policing that had to be done. We finished up, and one of the things that I talked about is this group is intense. And I go, understand the difference between fighting with and fighting for. Right. And who we fighting for is the most important part of that. Right. And so now we'll spend the next, 6 weeks getting in the weight room, strength conditioning, and really coming together as a group, which this DR trip does an amazing job. 45 plus guys are going, and we'll come together when we get back in January as a group ready to hit the season running.
Well, I mean, it has to make you feel a little bit excited as a coach to see the competitiveness, at least. Now that channeling that is what the coaching staff's role is.
Right.
But it had to make you feel pretty good to see at least that's there.
Yes.
And then now getting, like you said, channeling it, fighting for, not fighting with. That has to make you feel pretty good after the
It is. And you always worry about that in the World Series because you are fighting with each other. Right. And then all of a sudden, so how do I bring the group back together? Right. I talk to the guys a lot about, I don't want to have to light the fire. I want to have to tame the fire, right? And one of our captains, J.K. Sparks, was like, hey, we got to make sure that we're good on this. I was like, let me get you to the line, right? Let's toe that line, and then I'll let you know when we get over it, right? But it's one of those competitive fireness things that I think maybe we haven't had in the last 2 years because we were trying to figure out, do we belong? And trying to figure out how to do this thing. Where I think now we know how to do it. Okay, so now we get turned up to do it, right? And how far do we get, fired up and then too far, right? And I like to be at that point, right? Okay, that's enough, right? And then we can keep going.
Well, final thing I wanted to talk about, for those that have paid attention to how things have progressed on campus as we continue to add things here and there, a brand new indoor facility up. Completed, and now we're just moving stuff in and getting it ready to kind of go?
Yeah, it's we're doing the ratchets parts right now, and I say we, I sat on a buck and played with some things today. My coaching staff, our assistants are phenomenal. They're over there right now, really putting stuff together so our guys can get in there, right? It's been such a goalpost moment, right, where this has been a dream. where we can have a place to go. We're all high school kids. We're very little transfers, right? And we got to develop, and they got to have an opportunity to do that. And I'm excited for softball as well. Like, now they have a place that they can go, and the two sports can really share, a venue that's a baseball softball venue. Right, and the accessibility and what we can do in there is second to none. Right, and Coach Hunt and I were talking about yesterday. Like, we actually had two places that we could technically go. Like how lucky are we? How fortunate are we? And we've had some donors that have been just incredible. Right, that have allowed our student athletes to have this opportunity. So I thank those guys, and I thank the people that have allowed all this to get to this point where we can open the doors probably Wednesday or Thursday, and here we go. Let's get after it.
Well, and you touched on, technically we would still have two places. Right now, when weather has not been conducive, especially once we get into games, like, you would often send the opponent to take their batting practice on the other end of campus, which to some people might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but you're talking south end of campus, north end of campus, a big charter bus at times.
Sure.
Having the ability now to basically say, listen, drop the guys off on the island. And then they can walk over to our indoor facility if we have to take BP inside instead of done on the field. That has to be, at least just from a hospitality standpoint, it's going to make your guys' lives, you and Coach Hunt, a lot easier from a prep standpoint to say, hey, it's right there, not clear on the other side of campus.
Correct. Sometimes we get this Field of Dreams look because we can go through the left center field gate and go right up to the indoor, right? So you're going to see some of that when we're playing in the spring that you're like, where are they going? You're like, well, they're going to the indoor, right? And it's, again, we're just so fortunate and blessed to have the opportunity to have a facility like that where our guys can get in there anytime they want, and softball has access. And like, we did the schedule the other day for softball and baseball, and it took 5 minutes, right? It was like perfect, I think it also on the back end for Adam Gardner, like, it opens up time for the other sports and the other programs and the people that need that space across campus. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, but we'll certainly take the win on our end.
Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at what's coming up here on the schedule for the sports that are still in season here from the campus of Bennington College. You're watching the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed.
Welcome to the Heart of America Athletic Conference, where innovation meets tradition. Here, growth is not just measured in victories, but in the development of character and sportsmanship. Our student athletes compete at a championship level, pushing their limits every day. The Heart is committed to an uncommon student athlete experience that features some of the premier athletic programs in the NAIA. Our commitment to excellence goes beyond athletics, establishing a community of support and mentorship. But what truly sets us apart is the heart with which we play. Join us and experience the passion, the drive, and the spirit of champions. That passion and commitment extends off the playing field and into graduation. The Heart of America Athletic Conference, champions in competition, leaders in life.
Welcome back to the final segment on this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound, hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I want to thank Helen, Coach Peterson, and Coach Barner for visiting with us here this afternoon as we bring you the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed. Coming up this week on the campus of Benedictine College, a somewhat slow week, but a busy weekend coming up here from campus. Men's basketball will take on Kansas Christian Wednesday night at 7 p.m. inside the Ralph Nolan Gymnasium. That is our only game on campus this week. And then on Saturday, it's a very big Saturday for a couple of programs on campus, as we will be hosting the Hart UEN Clash of the Week. Once again, the conference comes back to campus where they started the season out, and we will have a show at 10 a.m. right here, most likely from Larry Wilcox Stadium, but weather contingent, we may have to change where that show is filmed from. Football takes center stage in that Clash of the Week as they will take on the MNU Pioneers at 1 p.m. And then, believe it or not, folks, it's conference basketball as the men's and women's basketball teams will be hosting the William Penn University Statesmen. The women at 5 and the men at 7, both those down in Ralph Nolan Gymnasium. We're having a canned food drive in association with the student athlete leadership team for those games as well. So be sure to bring some canned goods on your way out to the basketball game on Saturday. And then, of course, on Sunday, 6 p.m., live on the NAIA's YouTube channel will be the 2025 Football Championship Series selection show, where Benedictine will learn their pairings and their seeding in this year's FCS Championship. So once again, thank you for watching the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed here from the campus of Benedictine College. A nice job, as always, behind the scenes from Collin and Dakota and Cooper. This has been Josh Pound. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.